Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's UX group conversation. I'm Christy. I lead the UX department and very happy to see all of you today. We can go ahead and jump in. And David, you have the first couple of questions.
Yeah, so first, I just want to say I love the slides. They're great, a lot of good insight. I'm very happy, and for people in live stream, like it's in capital, very happy to see our focus on improving our SUS score. The question I have relates to SUS being a trailing indicator, and I call that out as users won't know the new thing is there, whether that's an improvement or a new feature, until they actually upgrade. How do we plan on measuring the success of the OKRs next quarter? Because a lot of them reference SUS score, where we might not ship the final component to the last release of the quarter. And for those who are not familiar, we have a lot of customers who only upgrade it every 3 or 6 months. So they wouldn't even see that for another several months, even after it's shipped.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a great question. We know that SUS is a trailing indicator. So it's what you've identified, which is upgrades. It's also general timing because things get delivered at the end of the quarter and those don't get captured in that quarter's SUS. There's also just when things change, it just takes a while for people to notice that a thing has changed, to use that thing enough to become comfortable with it, to see enough changes in aggregate to have it actually affect their overall perception of the product. So we are trying to find ways to help mitigate that. We have a Q2 KR from the UXR team that focuses on lightweight usability testing that should give us more of a leading indicator at a micro level of whether or not the changes we're making should have a positive impact on SUS. But let me pause there and let Adam speak more to that.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. Yeah, the key there, there's really two keys. One is using some of the same metrics that we're measuring SUS with, picture to be used in a smaller study rather than waiting every quarter to test like that. And the other is, as Chrissy mentioned, a very quick way to get a micro measure. And we're going to be doing that as the link has that Christy has in the agenda there. We'll be filling that out. That's essentially called the RIGHT methodology. So rapid iterative testing and evaluation. So we'll be building that out, and essentially that will allow people to test and get results back in a day. So we're super excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. The one last thing I'll add is that the way that we're looking at SUS score is based on the overall trend right now. So it had been going down quarter over quarter. Over the last couple of quarters, we seem to have evened out. We're hoping that that's the start of an upward trend, but we won't know until we get our score in at the end of this quarter. Performance has a huge impact on our SUS score. We know that based on the free text comments that come in. So that's one of those things too, where when even if we're making usability improvements to the UI, when we see performance concerns, that can impact SUS as well. So we're taking all of that into consideration. Does that answer your question? Anything else on that?
No, it answers the question. I think you and Adam hit on the real challenge. I do like a micro analysis of changes. The thing that I think would be great, and this is not something that is in the control of the UX team to do, is understand where our SUS score fits against competitors and other people in our space. We have a very technical product. We're doing a very good job making it very user-friendly, and that's a big thanks to the efforts the UX team has put into that. But we see it going down, but that could be just a trend across DevOps tools. I'd like us to be the best one, obviously, but the context of that number is kind of missing a little bit.
Yeah, so yes, we've talked a lot about this. We too would like to have a better sense of our SUS in the context of competitors. We are looking into ways to do that. Previously, Adam and I had talked about having our UX research team do that. That's not feasible right now. So we're even looking at the possibility of having a third party do that for us, we need to look into how expensive it's going to be, and then whether it's worth it based on the expense.
Yeah, and there's probably need EULA review as well to make sure like we're not doing something that is not good.
Exactly.
But
yes.
Again, it's the conversations you and I have, Christy, but now we're having it in front of 46 people. So
that's right.
The next question I have in there, I love slides 14 through 25. They're all the ones talking about interesting problems that are being solved. It's amazing to read them and realize that some of them are actually kind of smaller UI changes, but the large impact they do have. Now, I will say some of them are also probably large changes on the back end outside of UX, but from the improvement of usability is great. I will say I'm a little biased. The majority of those fall in the dev or sec. So like I feel our interesting problems are being looked at, but how would other people get involved if they wanted to have their interesting problems being looked at by UX that are not in one of those slides?
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression in any way that these are just UX driven, because they are not. They are a cross-functional effort that's PM and UX and dev. And I think that's true of almost every slide you see there. We do have one that's a more visionary focus on to-dos and notifications. It's kind of starting with the UX team, but I feel pretty confident saying everything else is a cross-functional effort at the stage group level. Any designers want to pop in and give your feedback on that?
Yeah, I would just, the point of the question is not, it's more for, let's say there's a PM on the call, or there's an engineer on the call, and how would they then engage and start that process is really the goal behind the question.
Yeah, I think the way that it's happening is everyone's giving ideas at the stage group level, and then that's coming bottoms up, and UX is getting engaged. Sometimes UX comes with the idea, sometimes it's PM, sometimes it's dev. It really just depends on what the problem is. But I do want to have some of our designers confirm or deny. Austin, picking on you. How does this happen in your stage group?
I'll happily answer if you'll give me more context, because I was definitely reading down the agenda into Sid's points.
Gotcha. So we've got a lot of interesting things that we're working on that we feature in the last section. You've got a slide that's in there. How do those interesting ideas come to fruition? Who's bringing them? Is it just UX saying, I have this idea, or is it a broader cross-functional effort?
Yeah, sure. So it's a combination for my team. A good number of things came into the validation track prior to me joining GitLab last summer. But from what I can hear, it's a combination of hearing things from customers as well as experiencing things as GitLab team members. So when we're dogfooding our own product, we might discover problems that we think are interesting and are worth solving for our different user base. So I wouldn't say it solely is on product management to come up with all the ideas, but definitely having that interface with the customer side leads to some more sparks for sure.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks for letting me pick on you. Becca.
Yeah, I think if I understand David's question, it's how can a PM or engineer engage with UX or get UX's attention on an idea? Is that right, David? Am I understanding that correctly?
It was, because like Becca, like you have a stable counterpart. I'm pretty sure Austin does too. Not everyone has a stable counterpart in UX or even in research. And so I hear from a lot of people, there are a lot of great ideas that they have, and I'm trying to give them a way to, after seeing this, know how to properly engage. Like, should they be reaching out to another designer? Should they be tagging people, an engineering manager, whatever, just to, I think to Christy's point, everyone has some really great ideas on how to improve, and I'm just making sure they all be surfaced in the right way.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, a lot of the ideas come from the PMs. They're talking to customers very frequently. I know that the security scanner status widget that I included in the deck was definitely driven from customer requests. They were using APIs to come up with their own tables and finding their own workarounds because there was nothing available in the UI. So that's definitely something that prioritized that on our roadmap. But yeah, I think generally, like if someone doesn't know which designer to reach out to or how to get an idea considered on the roadmap, going into the UX channel is a really good idea, or engaging with the PM directly. But we definitely see some people coming into the UX Slack channel and saying like, here's an issue. Can a designer get eyes on this or contribute to this? And we all know kind of like who to ping, whose area that is. So I hope that helps.
I'm good. We can go to the next question.
Cool. Sid.
Yeah, thanks for the video. It mentioned that the CTRT is an industry standard, and I couldn't find any more information. I love the examples that are under 3C, but I had trouble finding it.
Yeah, Craig, do you want to talk about that one?
So you wouldn't necessarily find CTRT, those specific initials out there, just because that's our implementation of an industry standard, which is generally based off of DITA, which I included a link into their Darwin information typing architecture. We've expanded it a little bit. Normally DITA would have you use concepts, tasks, and reference, but we've expanded it to talk about troubleshooting, which is our own take of how we want to talk about troubleshooting information and how we want to organize and present that information within the documentation. So you may not find CTRT, but you should be able to find things about concepts and tasks and reference as it pertains to how you organize the documentation information within documentation pages themselves and within the documentation set overall. It allows you to be able to set up, rules and guidance and understanding of how you should talk about concepts or tasks, how to present information about the tasks that people are actually doing, and do it in a way that's repeatable and scannable so that it's easier for people to be able to find what they're looking for as they're scanning through pages or looking through search results.
Yeah, I think and part of this is coming as a response to the fact that when we look at our documentation, we know we've done a pretty good job on having task and reference information. We've done a less good job of having concept information out there that says like, this is why you would want to use this. This is why you might not want to use it depending on your situation. And then we have troubleshooting information, but it tends to be interspersed with the tasks and the references, which makes it hard to find. So if we can get to a standard where if you come to the GitLab docs, you know that when you look at a page, if you want troubleshooting information, it's at the end of the page, it's under a section that says troubleshooting. We think that's going to really improve the usability of our content. And Craig, I know you and Susan did exemplar interviews before we started this process with some companies, and Sid, these are companies I think that you also see as exemplars. I can't say them here just because the companies have asked us not to, but are they taking a similar approach to their content?
Effectively, yes. Maybe not necessarily these specific sorts of things, but they are identifying their data in a more structured fashion and allowing it to be able to be interspersed throughout with regular patterns. The whole point is taking advantage of patterns to work off of people's normal pattern matching ability. If they look at one piece of documentation, it's setting expectations as to how you should be able to use other pieces of documentation within the same documentation set. And so this affords us the ability to do that.
Thank you. Sid, does that get at what you were asking?
Yeah, no, that already answered it in the first two sentences. This is great. And I love the concept, task, reference, and troubleshooting. I think it's a great order.
Great.
Cool. You get the next one.
I just want to raise a concern about, I want to raise a concern about splitting one topic over multiple pages. I think it's very easy for stuff to not get updated when it's spread amongst multiple pages. And I think that should be part of our consideration when we look at that. I'm not saying don't do it. Keeping it up to date has been the hardest thing of the documentation. So anything that makes that harder should get scrutinized. It's not a question. Hey, how do you think about keeping stuff up to date when you spread it across multiple pages?
Greg.
I'll answer it's just because I'm here. It is a concern, any time that you introduce any sort of complexity beyond just here's a single page that we're talking about one particular topic or concept or whatever, has the opportunity to introduce technical debt. And so anytime we do that, we evaluate that opportunity for technical debt to determine, is it worth splitting out? Is the page unwieldy? Does the page try to cover too much for a reasonable person who is sitting down and trying to follow things? Is it difficult to find certain pieces of information? Do we want to try to highlight certain pieces of information? Those all go into our discussions about whether we should break pages out or not. And fortunately, we also have technical writers who are associated with stages and groups that can be resources to be another check on trying to ensure that pages are updated, working with the content creators, and also being aware of their pages to say, oh, this is something that's going on. I need to ensure that these things are kept up to date. So it's a conscious decision. Yes, it is the opportunity for technical debt. We have technical writers that can try to avoid this from being an issue, and we also only do it when we feel that it's worth it.
I would assume cross-linking with wild abandon is probably part
and the global navigation, enforces some of those kind of links too, so that you can kind of see some of the relationships.
Cool. I think there's still a lot of opportunity left in splitting, like having multiple topics on the same page. I see that like a lot of times. Like you can easily go in there and find topics that have to be split off. I haven't seen a topic that's too big for one page, but I love the direction everything is going. So I'll follow the direction. Thanks. It's an FYI, I guess, which is weird in a group conversation, but still. For LargeMRS, I love the work Pedro's done to look into that. And I'm going to make it I'm going to push to make it a Q2 OKR to resolve it. And I've put on the R&D call on how we can escalate faster next time. I think if you look at like how far we're from the mark and how important it is to our users, we're kind of responding too slowly. I think that's kind of an organizational-wide thing, and we're going to approach that, well, R&D-wide thing, and we're going to approach that R&D-wide. Feel free to comment or anything else.
Yeah, I'll comment. I want to start by saying Pedro would be mad at me if I didn't say it's not just Pedro who's been looking at this. It really has been the entire code review team. So Catherine from research, and then also Kai as the PM, and the developers are looking at this too. So it's Pedro did the video and he's heading it up, but the code review team is really focused on this as a larger unit. We absolutely are going to have an OKR to improve MR performance and usability. And so I think you're going to get what you want plus other things. They're looking not just at the problems with LargeMRS, but they're also looking at performance, and they're looking at the merge widget and merge request widgets. And this will be not even just during Q2, but also during Q3, because we know MRs, they are absolutely critical to our user experience. They are so very important. And they take that really seriously, but we're also taking it seriously as an R&D organization.
Cool. Yeah, what I'm going to push for in Q2 is not just, hey, we'll improve stuff, and MRs are an important part of that, but let's also, before the quarter starts, let's set goals. What's a large MR? How fast should it load? All these specific things I want to have flushed out before the quarter starts, so that we have very clear goals to achieve.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen Michelle Gill on the engineering side looking at what that percentage improvement needs to be. So I think we're headed the direction that you want us to be headed. So
great.
Yeah, I'll just add there. LargeMRs are typically a catch-all term, and it's probably something we should stop saying, but it's the only word we have right now. But LargeMRS can mean lots of changes in a merge request, which is sort of a different set of problems that we have to solve, because that is more of a engineering and performance problem to solve. LargeMRS can also mean lots of comments and lots of people involved in the merge request, which is a different endpoint and a different sort of user experience challenge to address. And so those are, we say LargeMRS, and I will say one of the reasons the team has not been focused on it is historically, when we said the word LargeMR, we were talking about lots of changes, and GitLab's philosophy to that is make a smaller merge request, and then you don't sort of have that problem. And so we're starting to see a confluence of both of the lots of comments, lots of sort of medium-sized changes hit sort of both of those thresholds at the same time, which is why we're seeing sort of more and more issues in this area now.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's helpful. We're past the point of telling our customers and users they're wrong, so we're just going to fix it for them. If they want LargeMRS, they can get it. And I would love a taxonomy kit. That's basically what I asked for just. So I'll do a proposal. So don't do exactly what I say, but a large MR we define as an MR that has many comments, many files, large size files, etc. And then put numbers on all of these. And then make an MR that has all these elements. And then set a goal for how fast that MR should load and how little jank there should be in the interface when you go from comment to comment. That's what I want before the start of Q2. Because I think this is, as you said, it's gone on too long. It's been like, oh, large means this, large means that. We need to get the worst case and fix it in the next 3 months. And I want to have quantifiable, at least a quantifiable definition of what it is, and preferably with some performance goals as well. And I think considering kind of how important this is, it's the number one problems that users have with our code review. It's come up frequently in issues, social media, and customer conversations. If you look under 5B, Pedro, especially on slide 9, has done an amazing job on highlighting how big of a problem this is. This is a showstopper for using GitLab. This is why we're losing people to GitHub. Let's get on this, and let's have clear goals going into the quarter, because the clearer the goals, the better the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And that's the plan and what we're working through, is to figure out what those limits are.
Cool. Number
I
6.
also want to share, if that's okay, that we're also looking from the angle of the perception of performance, because that's more important than the pure performance and response time. So it's, I think, as I said in the video, it's two sides of the same coin. So we also want to set a metric that is like a subset of the SUS score that allows us to measure the perception of performance by the users, so that we can make improvements over time and see how that perception improves as well. Because also what research has shown is that even if you make some good performance improvements in terms of response times, many users will not notice it. They will look at 1 month, they're going to say, oh, nothing's changed for me, but something kind of feels different and I'm able to complete my tasks better, but I don't attribute it to performance. But it could be performance. It's just that, yeah, humans are humans. And so it's difficult to gauge that. Yeah.
So Adam, sounds like we've got a pilot project for the right testing.
Was thinking the same thing. Yes.
Outstanding. All right.
We should be coming at this from all angles. So that the kind of the hard performance stuff, how fast does the page load, the SUS score or the write score or those things, but also find out like, hey, we had like 2 expand buttons for 1 file and we fixed it if you showed white space, but then it's still there if you hide white space. How is our code in that way that we can't, that we have to make these fixes for all like situations? Stuff like that also needs to be on there. So many things, from code architecture to hard loading things to system usability scores. So I expect lots of proposals for the OKRs in Q2, and I invite people to put them in the CEO channel. No further things. I love the technical writing fundamentals. I think it's really cool. Please consider working handbook first and making this a course in our LXP.
Absolutely. They wanted to pilot it with technical writers first to get it right and make improvements. They've done that. And then in Q2, we have an OKR to get it into EdCast. And so that's actively in process.
Yeah. I'm fine. Like, I love the content. The fact that you want to test it with a certain group doesn't mean it's handbook second. Handbook first means handbook first. It's not, the handbook is not what you put it into when you're done. It's what you put it into when you're just getting started. We've tried the other thing and it doesn't work. So don't feel the need to work outside of the handbook if content is still in a rough state. It's okay to have drafts in the handbook.
That's a good reminder. Thank you. Looks like we're at time. Thank you, everyone.